Do we need the theme song? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, we're off compute.
Ooh, it's getting more elaborate every time.
I assume there will be
Yeah.
a drum solo.
Do I have to do that one?
Yes. You have 1 week to learn.
Welcome back to everyone, and we are in a fancy studio thing today, and we're going to be talking about programming languages. This is myself and Arlen Brower. I'm David Cooper, of course, if you've forgotten that. So, Arlen, I would like to ask you, what is the best programming language, and why are you wrong?
Oh, so it's funny because that's actually the very first question I ask my students in programming languages. It's I send out a quick survey, I tell them, and give them a QR code and everything, and ask if they can fill that out. And it's those exact questions,
Yes.
slightly differently. It's what's the best programming language, and why? And then the wrong part comes when I actually talk about the results of that and say, let's talk about that. So I would say the best programming language is either Rust or Elixir, and I'm wrong because nobody uses them.
Yes, well, you might be correct because everyone else is not good enough to use them.
No, that's a good way of putting it. I'm going to steal that one.
We do, of course, teach students Java a lot for our software engineering, computer science, and cybersecurity degrees, and we teach Python to the wider body of science and engineering students, I guess.
Yeah.
And so each of those has its own purpose. But I don't think any of us. I don't know if anyone really likes Java. It seems to be just ahead of the curve enough to stop people from moving away from it.
I think that's probably about right. So I mentioned that survey with programming languages, which is one of the units that I used to teach, and at the end of the semester, I would pretty much send out the exact same survey again, just to see if there's much of a difference. And what I usually find is that in the first week, people will say, okay, Java, Python, and a little bit of folks choose C.
Yeah.
And it's probably about an equal split between Java and Python. And then, I'll always get some kind of student coming in and saying, you know what, assembly is the best.
Oh.
And then I have to ask them, okay, do they mean, AT&T syntax or, and get into it with that. But by the end of semester, what I've found is that most people seem to jump ship from Java. Probably about 60 to 75% of people stay with Python, and nobody moves off of C. If you've chosen C as your favorite language at that point, there's probably no convincing you otherwise at that point.
There's no fixing you at that point.
Yeah, exactly right. So, I think people do pick Java in that instance because it's just what they know, and that's actually what some of the results say. It's very informal. It is quite literally like a Microsoft form, and it just says, what do you think? But usually people say, I like Java because it's what I know, which is honestly a pretty fair reason to use a language. If that's the one you know, you don't have to spend as much time learning anything new.
I mean, that's in an industrial context, that still applies, I guess. You can
Absolutely.
be more productive with what you know. So, I mean, it's not don't learn new things, but if it comes down to the crunch, use the skills you have, I guess.
Exactly. And I guess there's a opportunity risk in that sense. Like if you choose this language and maybe there's a perfect language out there, is there some kind of long-term cost to that? And we see that with cases like Twitter, where it was originally built with Ruby, I believe. I believe it was Ruby. And then they moved kind of the back-end stuff over to Scala because at some point, their productivity wasn't enough. They were just getting slammed with requests. They had to move to something that was a bit more scalable.
I guess Ruby being a dynamic language has all of the slight drawbacks of that, and Scala, I don't know how you pronounce it actually.
Good question.
Has I don't think I've really properly used it, but it's got a reputation for being very type focused, I guess. And
Yeah.
that's the big question with programming languages, isn't it? Static versus dynamic typing.
It's definitely a big one. And it's another favorite topic of mine where I say, okay, guys, now I've asked you what language is best, what type system is best? And, even things like, do you need to have a semicolon at the end of your statements or not?
Yes.
It's all up to personal preference in a sense.
I do love the things you can do with JavaScript in a kind of cackly, evil way with semicolons or lack thereof, which shows all the pitfalls, I guess.
Yeah.
You can have something that looks like a JavaScript object that you're returning from a function, but because you've separated it out into a different line, it turns out to be actually a block of code with a label in it, like the interpreter interprets it in a wildly different way.
Yeah.
But Kotlin manages to get around that without any problems, I don't think, and Groovy seems to be fine without semicolons. Maybe it's just a different syntactical environment. But
Yeah, I think it is more of a decision for the people who want to build the compilers.
yeah,
So if they want to spend a lot of time working on their compilers and making them as foolproof as possible, you can get away without, the terminating semicolon. Just use new lines. But when you do the new lines, there's a lot of ambiguity there, and that can be tricky. So it depends on what you, as the language creator, actually wants to focus on.
there is an advantage definitely to having a simpler compiler because I guess it's more reliable if you spend a certain amount of effort. Do you want to spend that effort fixing all the bugs or making it basically work in the first place and having bugs left over?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's always a lot of fun to me to show folks, the changes to compilers, and they'll always have like a big list of like bug fixes, and it's a great thing to point at and say, hey guys, did you know your compiler actually has bugs?
That's a scary thought.
And they're usually like weird edge cases that you look at and go, that's kind of weird, but very, very rarely actually encounter. But the fact that they exist is, I think, kind of fascinating because as an end user, you don't really think about that. You just trust the compiler is actually working. It's like one of the things, like you go to Stack Overflow and you'll see people saying, I think the compiler's broken, and everybody's laughing at them saying, absolutely not, it's you.
Because 99.99% of the time that is true, but not 100% of the time.
Yeah,
I get students who've said that to me because you have these situations where you're so convinced that what you've done is right, and so the only theory in your brain is that the compiler must be wrong.
Exactly.
And just take some outside input sometimes for that could be corrected.
Yeah, and a lot of times, the compiler is working exactly how the language designer made it. And maybe it's them who's wrong.
Why am I thinking of PHP at that point? I don't know. Could be any reason.
Yeah. Or Perl.
I haven't had the pleasure or displeasure of using Perl much either.
No, well, Perl can basically do everything. That's part of the problem. That's part of the draw as well. That's part of why people who like Perl really like Perl. It's because you can do a lot really quickly.
Yes. I have to wonder though, do two people who like Perl actually like the same Perl, or do they like different Perls?
I think it's fair to say that in a lot of cases they like different Perls. But there has, to be fair, in more recent years, people are kind of converging on kind of what they think is like the best subset of Perl.
Okay.
Like there was even a website like, is your code evil? Like, is your Perl code evil? Or it was something like that.
Yeah.
And it would go through it and like check, are you using evil parts of Perl? And I thought that was fascinating that people are like sectioning out entire portions of the language as evil.
That's kind of what they did with C++ as well.
Hmm.
There's entire features that were added to C++ and then dropped later on, like the exception declarations that I believe at some, I don't know when they were introduced, maybe in C++ '03 or something, but you could declare a method to throw exceptions just as you do in Java. Except that what actually happens is not that the compiler verifies the exception's been thrown, but that it aborts the program if any other exception was thrown, which is kind of not what you expect.
Yeah, kind of the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was just removed from the language altogether, I think. What do you think are the trends in programming languages?
Okay. So I think one of my favorites to look at is like the meteoric rise of Python, because I remember even in my undergrad doing machine perception. Yeah, it was machine perception, so computer vision stuff. And I was thinking, I really want to do my assignment in Python. And the lecturer at the time was saying, I don't think that's a good idea. You're probably gonna like this little language is just not gonna hack it. I was like, I really feel like there's a lot here, and he let me do it, just saying that don't come to me if it's a week before the due date and you're saying it's broken. Really, it made my life a lot easier, and this is going back to like 2008, I think.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have all the great libraries that it does now.
Right.
And it's only taken off since then.
It's really interesting, Python, because it's an old language. It was created in 1991, I think.
Yep.
Older than Java, certainly older than C# and a lot of things.
Yeah, and a lot of people a lot of people think, well, Python is like just the continuation, like the spiritual successor of Ruby. But Ruby came after Python, technically.
Yeah.
And then, Ruby had its big rise and kind of a big drop off, and Python's, taken over. But yeah, so I mean, I think it's been really interesting to see that language take off. Especially when I think you look at, traditionally some of the language that people have maligned, like Perl, where it's like, okay, Perl can kind of do everything in a whole bunch of different ways. Well, so can Python, really.
Yeah, but there's a fairly well-defined set of best practices for
Exactly.
how we should
I
do
think
things.
that's the big difference, is that it has that community, like that impetus to make your code nice. There's that kind of culture with it.
And it's the language modification process that I'm also quite interested in as well. So I forget what they call the Python one, but Python has PRPs, isn't it? Python improvement proposals.
Yeah, yep. That's right.
And Java has JSPs or something. I can't remember what they are, but yeah. It's fascinating to me to read through those and just see people's decision making and get a sense of how Wild West it is, or whether everyone's trying to reach consensus. And there does seem to be a very consensus-driven approach in Python, where people are free to have all these wacky ideas, but then there's a fairly rigorous process of assessing their pros and cons and how complex is this going to make the language. And
yeah, exactly. And of course, the creator of Python is the benevolent dictator for life.
Yes,
is the title. I don't know how much he steps in with it these days or not. I haven't looked that up in a while, but he's definitely one of those folks that I always really liked seeing his thought processes on things. A very common one was the inclusion of self. So for those who don't know, in Python, you have to use the keyword self for any of your methods. And there was a question of, okay, well, can't we just get rid of these? And I remember, the creator stepped in and said, this is why I think we need it, and had a very detailed, thoughtful, responds to all that. And I thought it's actually really cool when you can get a creator of a language involved with, the maintenance to that degree.
Mm. It's I guess he's, well, how long has it been? It's more than 35, nearly 40 years or something, or just about 35 years anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's that's a whole lifetime worth of devotion to a particular language, and it will be interesting to see. I guess in the long term, like the languages are going to continue evolving. What changes would happen in what would we expect to see in over the decades into the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting to see. There's definitely things like, will AI modules become core parts of a language?
Yeah.
Right? We have a lot of different things out there that are doing AI sort of things that are leveraging your graphics card to do different tasks. Are we going to see that be less of an external, third-party service and more of something that's built first class into a language?
Yeah, there was this kind of wacky idea of agent-oriented programming back in the early 90s, I think, which I felt to be a bit of a dead end, because it looked like it was completely academic and no one had a proper real implementation of it, or even really an idea of what an implementation would really look like.
Yeah, or even what an agent is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some high-flung ideas about that, but yeah.
But to circle back around, okay, so I mean, I told you my favorite languages and why I'm wrong. What about you? What's your favorite languages and why are you wrong?
Why am I? Well, of course I'm not wrong. So my problem with languages is that I can't just have one. I must have all of them, or at least a sizable number of them. They're like desserts. You have to sample them. You can't just dive into only one.
So you don't have a favorite dessert?
I enjoy a dessert. I enjoy mousse and ice cream and pecan pie, but you would enjoy one of them less than you would enjoy multiple of them. So, even though I can see the flaws of different languages, I enjoy creating things with multiple languages and having them involved. I have to say, I kind of get annoyed by C++, as no one will be surprised. But I do like, even though I can see the flaws in Java, I actually like Java, sort of despite what I said at the start.
Yeah.
I like Kotlin, which feels it's got some limitations that feel a bit arbitrary, but it's a practical improvement on Java, I guess.
I think that's fair. And I think Java, for what it does it pretty well, and it is surprisingly performant as well.
Yeah.
So you can do quite a lot. You're not going to reach kind of C levels of performance, but you're going to get pretty close.
Yeah.
For pretty much almost all of your usual, industry developer needs, it does exactly, what you want.
Yes. And yeah, it does what you want, and although yes, it's not going to be quite as performant as C, what you're getting is the ability to, or the relief from having to think about stack versus heap memory management and all that stuff, which is where a lot of the performance, I guess, might come from.
Yeah, and that's what I find fun.
Yes. I think when we were using Rust, the goal was to try and do everything on the stack, because it seems to provide the language features you need to make that work properly. And eventually there are some situations where you realize it's just a little bit beyond that, but you want to do anything polymorphically.
Yeah, and then you start using boxes everywhere.
Yes, of course. Why wouldn't you do that? I enjoyed Rust as well. I do enjoy Python, and I mean, there's lots. As you know, I attempted the Advent of Code thing, trying a different language every day,
Yes.
basically.
Yes, I do. I do enjoy that endeavor. That's another fun use case to show students in programming languages is like, look at how crazy this guy is.
As if we needed another reason.
Yeah, and I think my favorite is like, have you ever tried to make a full system in Bash? And I've only ever had one student who did. I think it was he wanted to make like a DDR clone in Bash for some reason. And I thought, okay, that's weird.
Although I feel like having attempted something like that myself, the correct answer to that question is no.
Yeah.
But I think we might have to leave it there.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we might be able to pick up at some later date if we have any more inspiration.
It's definitely a topic I can spend hours on.
Yeah.
Since I teach it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.